Yeah, I know. This is a bit cool, isn't it? Hello, everyone, and let's see. Let's start counting through the symbols, because we've got the new one, supplied by Dragon Fanel, which is pretty darn cool. Standard background. Hello. And we'll start off with that. How are we all doing today? Hello. Hello, Jay Richardson. Hello, Blue Shirt Buddha. Hello, Albert Sasky. Hello, Golden Eagle. Hello, Aster Crow. Hello, Jay Illingworth. Hello, Daniel Freeman. Hello, SM Pi. Hello, Bishan. Hello, Boundhome. Hello, Jay Richardson. And hello, John Shea. Yes, there is noise. There is often noise. I'm quite a noisy person, and I do this, admit this. So, today is a good day. Today is many things, actually. Starters, if at any point I do give in and end up ordering pizza long before this is over, that is because lunch was not able to be served due to the joyous thing that was the mince actually being off. Secondly, so it was fine. It went in frozen to cook, and then after we got it out, it turned out to be rancid. So yeah, that was fun. So no lunch. So pizza is the order of the day for today, and it's kind of interesting ordering pizza, but in a shielded household, but it's viable. Hello, Thomas Rottweiler. I'm not sure if I said. Hi, Ian. Hi, Ian. How are you doing? Hope the daughter's well. Hi, Oliver. I know. I like the new logo as well. It's very appropriate. Hi, Mike. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Stafford. Hi, Jim. You finished the homework in time, Jim. That is excellent. Hi, Carl. Yeah. Hi, Greg. Hello, everyone. Right then. It's a fun day. I'm wearing what I consider a very appropriate t-shirt for today because I was looking for a t-shirt which would, one out of my collection, which would fit with the story of today, which is, of course, what's happened to the Bonhomme Richard. And we're talking about this on Bilge Pumps this morning, and it will come out next week, that Bilge Pumps, on Wednesday. And the thing I was most sort of looking at it when I saw that ship going up was that was a lot of sailors home. And not just sailors who are currently serving it, but a lot of sailors who have served it in the past. It was their home. It's not just a ship, it's not just a warship, it's a lot of sailors and Marines home. And it was lost. And it's rather sad. Hi, Jeff Vila. Jebila, good afternoon. Interesting fact of the day. The tribal class were almost called corvettes because they were so much bigger than previous destroyers. Yes, they actually considered calling them corvettes. They also considered calling them frigates. And they also did look at calling them something called a swan. Or which was another type of early, actually another name for a sick freight. There were lots of different names looked into them. They ended up going with tribals and just calling them the tribal flotillas. And then eventually they decided they were the tribal destroyers. But interesting enough, they had the same debate when it came to the daring class, and that's why the darings are listed as daring class in all documents rather than daring class destroyers. Unfortunately, it wasn't a home-cooked pizza. It was a home-cooked casserole, which the mince was just... Oh, I tasted it, because I'm usually the guinea pig in my family. I love my family dearly, but I am usually the guinea pig when it comes to these things, because, let's be honest, of the three of us, I'm the one least likely to croak. Touch wood. And it's an interesting scenario. Let's put it this way. I tasted it and it was, oh my goodness me. So, as I said, if pizza's ordered, it'll be here and you'll be able to watch me consume pizza while talking. She's still floating at the moment as far as I know. Staff Thompson. And... ooh. Yeah. Hi, Austin. Hi, Potter. Well... could the USS Bonhomme Richard be rebuilt? I doubt it. Hi, Shawmac. Jeff, I doubt it. She'll be rebuilt. I was looking at the pictures I've seen, and the trouble is, when it gets up to that temperature, it has a lot of quite a big impact on, well, mostly on the steel compositions. Yes, the new logo is Tribals, Battles and Darings with Iron Brew. Right then. So, the original plan was, of course, what I'll just start talking about quickly first. But first of all, let's mention bilge pumps. As I said, today we were recording a new episode. It was cool. We went through so many different things, and I have to admit this one is going to be... we have now admitted we are aiming for 70 minutes rather than an hour. This is going to be the second one in a row that's going to hit the 90-minute mark. There are several reasons for this. One, there was a lot to discuss today. Two, Torvamine set us a question which frankly was almost evil. What film would we, what battle, what event in naval history would we like to see turned into a movie? And I mean, there were so many options, and it was a long-running debate. But actually, most of it was on the Bonhomme Richard and fire on ships, and looking in and talking about that through the various experiences and studies we've done on various other ships that we've gone through in the past, and looking into all this stuff. It was both a sombering and an enjoyable experience, if that can be summed up. And what might have been. Turning 3434. Question: after your video today, didn't Rickover just make sure that the complicated tech really worked, or are there oopsies I'm not aware of? Okay, he was very obsessed with making everything work, but he also had quite a tendency for pissing off people. He had quite a lot of personal grudges. He would neck. And there were issues with some of the technology as well. But he also was obsessed with pushing the newest technology. But the difference was, it's going to sound strange, he could push the newest and new technology under his control because he kept very tight control of it. And very tight control of everything. And it was pretty much in one field. But it set us the precedence that every single program, everything has to go for the newest and best of the best. And I'll get into this in a bit later, but it causes long trouble with precedence. Oliver Pike, do you think the USN will recommission the Pellew or just accept the gap in LDHD LHA numbers? Bilge Pump spent a long time talking about this, so I'm going to leave that to Bilge Pumps. When it comes out next week, you're going to hear all about it. Vision. Maybe the USS Bonhomme could be rebuilt as a casemate ironclad like the US Merrimack and CS Virginia? I doubt that. Shomak, jet fuel can't melt steel beams, but it can weaken them so they collapse. It can do all sorts of things, can jet fuel. Austin Harmon, I'd like to see the Battle of Samar with Taffy Free made into a film. Austin, are you really Jamie from Armored Carriers writing on here in disguise? Is that really who you are, Austin? Because that's exactly what he was saying. Thomas Rottweiler, be interested on your thoughts on Eric Grove. Knew him many moons ago in London. He's a superstar. He's one of the nicest guys I've ever met in history. Stephen Thompson. Dusclock. Doubt you've had a chance, but I left a comment on your intro video from today. Becomes relevant once we reach Elmo. I think I've read it, and yeah, I'll get into it. Austin Harmon. The trouble is that the hero dies, which they do not like in Hollywood these days. Yeah, that is always a problem with things. Donna Fritz. Ooh, and they have pictures of the inside of Von Horischen, including aerial ones above the flight deck. There are lots and lots of pictures around there, and there are lots of pictures doing their tour on Discord and various other places. Awesome. Hey, I'm down for a good tragedy with sheer. Stephen Gross. Wasn't Markov the chap who was in command of Russian Pacific Fleet before getting killed in Battle of the Yellow Sea? Yes, he was. Oh. And I urge you to all go up, look up Alexei Kirillov and tell me he is not the Russian Admiral version of Drac. Tom's got Golden Eagle. What is Bilge Pumps? Bilge Pumps is the weekly podcast series which is me, Drac Infernal, and Jamie from Armored Carriers sitting discussing what's been going on in the last week in naval affairs. So basically, every Tuesday we get together and discuss what's been going on, and then it comes out the following Wednesday. So I will record. We've recorded today on the 14th, and it will come out on the 22nd. But there is actually, for the first 3 weeks, that includes this week, there's been 2 episodes a week, and they're on SimSec. You'll find a link to it down below to the latest episode. Anyway, Alexei Kirillov is, I swear, the Russian Admiral version of Drac Infernal. He is application of mathematics to various maritime problems. That just sounds like something Drac would say. And I've told this to himself, and I think he's now going to look him up as well, because I think the two are sort of and have a great affinity. Admiral Yi Sun Sin, who I love because there's just so many interesting things he gets up to. Far more, he's known for the turtle ships, but he does so much more than that. Professor Harry Bennett, who was one of my PhD examiners, and who, along with Professor Eric Grove, are 2 of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And Norman, the godfather of modern naval history, Freeman. Well, I decided to do him because every week, every time I order more books, I seem to end up with another Freeman coming there. Now, Jeff Beeler has corrected that I have actually called Rick Rover in my PowerPoint. And that is the joy of dyslexia and autocorrect, in that I was writing about a Rick Rover a few weeks ago, so I had it saved in the spell check in Word, and it's now turned Rick over into Rick Rover. And I didn't notice. Reader homework. Did you remove the extra R? No, I haven't. I did. I just went, frankly, I'm going to own it. It's, it's what happens. Hi, King George V. Asgard, Cruiser, typing on my tablet is a pain, sorry. That's the crow. Leaning out of his cruiser. Donna Fritz, weird names, dyslexia and autocorrect make for a bad time. Fun, but yes, they do. They make for a lot of. Honestly, the trouble was I was worrying so much about getting the Russian and the Chinese names wrong that I just presumed the American ones were correct, and I got Zumwalt, and Rickover is the easiest one a lot to spell, and so I didn't even really check it. This is Sod's Law, basically. Golden Eagle. How about Li Hongkang? I decided not to this time. Decided not to. Stafford Thompson, Dr. Clark. Professor Grove seems like a nice man, though I think he could be nastier than Gimli if provoked. I wouldn't say. Interesting, Joseph. I seriously thought you would say in your 5 on stream video one of the 4 people was me for my singing. Actually, King George V, it was tempting to mention you, and I do tend to make sure that you're catered for, because I know you're very passionate about your history. Dyslexia is always fun. But also, Makarov and... If we go back... Makarov and... Kirillov should be looked up because they this is one of the reasons why I don't do some of these people, is because I'm still getting to pronounce their names. I can only do Tsingtao so well because over the years I managed to find out how it's spelt and how it's pronounced. Kirillov and Makarov should be looked at because they do so much work in developing the stability of ships and working on how to make them survivable and counter flooding and flooding. It's really a massive shame that Makarov is killed when he is, because honestly, he was the only one who could have probably kept the Russian fleet afloat at Tsushima. That's the interesting thing. Actually, Tsingtao, you still get the... Yeah, I know, it's Qingda. But I still get it wrong. Yes, I know. At a certain point. Yeah. That is the trouble. Makarov was... and look at that beard. That beard alone should have made him unsinkable, but it didn't. It's just terrible. It's terrible. So, here is what we ended up going with, and it's the new sort of introduction, as I said. As we all know, that should be spelt Rickover, not Rick Rover. I am sorry. But what I found interesting was his quotes from, and there's a link to the document I got it from, of Roosevelt. And Rickover is this sort of leader who is obsessed with presenting himself in history. He really doesn't do well with the Admirals at the time. He really isn't good managing up as well as down in terms of the Navy. He wants things done perfectly and his way. And it causes a lot of trouble. Tom Frog, what's special about Makarov's beard? It's just massive. How was that? Also, Makarov is famous for his 9-cutter operations at the back seat. Yes, he does a lot of things. Senpai, how about Admiral Walter Cohen in the future videos? Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, I know. I Rick Rovered myself, Jeff Beeler, I know. Rick Over's a fun guy. So, the more and more I looked into him, the more and more I look into Rick Over, the more I study and look at him over the years, the more and more I realize that he is in many ways a product of his age. Technology is pushing forward, and people are needing to leap, and he leaps. But the trouble is, the system he sets up and generates works fine with him in charge as a central controlling authority. The trouble is, though, is the system that comes after, and that's the interesting scenario. See, on my little home fleet base, 200 miles inland, apparently already has a squadron of 35s. Hope to see them fly by instead of F-18s. Cool. Audio's ahead of the video. I have no idea why. It says it's okay. Let's see. Nope, it should all be okay. It should be matching up. Audio synced. Okay. Alright. YouTube does sometimes lag fun times. Right. So, the trouble is Rickover is... The biggest problem with him is HMS Enterprise. The USS Enterprise, I mean. I always call it HMS. Sorry, that's the trouble with having so many Enterprises around, okay? The USS Enterprise for me is always a spaceship, and then I remember it's also a carrier. Her system, which they over-engineer with 8 reactors, all different, all complicated, is just... Yes, you're getting a nuclear carrier out of it, but by gum are you making your life complicated. And that is also half the trouble with Rickover. He pushes things for the most complicated way. And this is when you get to the Admirals. And this is sort of what I'm planning to work through today and sort of look at the legacy of all these Admirals on the modern world, on the modern navies. Why 8 reactors? Basically, they weren't sure when they were putting in how powerful it was going to be. And at that time, they weren't as sure about their chemistries. So it becomes a really quite a powerful system. But it does mimic the conventional layout, as Daniel Freeman's pointed out. And it allows them to sort of build in a level of redundancy. You realize very quickly you don't need 8, but you know. And for refueling, it's... oh, good lord. Donna Fritz, does him pushing for complex systems make these systems easier to develop now? Possibly. But also, potentially, when he picked a route, that was the only route he'd tolerate. So he fails in succession planning, as Daniel Freeman puts on, but he fails in terms of letting different ideas spring up, which means that now we're often looking at a lot of things and looking at how you success. In terms of looking at how you can generate things going forward and looking at how you find things. A lot of the ideas which he closed off have actually turned out long term to not be that bad an ideas and actually quite useful. Jano, seems to me that Admiral Rickover took a leaf out of General Leslie Groves' books. I'm in charge, and we will do this my way. Yes, and he wasn't very good at bringing those necessary does with him. It was either the Rickover way or nowhere, or the you had no way. Now, Seth Thompson's just pointed out: did Enterprise run 4 on, 4 off? I think sometimes she may do with just about 2. But yes, she could run 4 on, 4 off, and often though, you don't ever really turn a nuclear reactor off. They're always sort of running. They always have their chemistry going. It's nuclear propulsion is interesting, and there is a very good reason why the British went the way we did with the Queen Elizabeth class. Sure, Mac. They had no idea, so they went with what they knew and made it a hell of fast. Yeah, pretty much. They did. They made it as fast as they could. Done, Fritz. Is him being inflexible a sign of his superior saying it was Project A or no project at all, and if you waste money on X, it's coming out of A? Not really. At this point in the Cold War, Rickover could have got money for pretty much anything with the way he had influence over Congress. It's more that he felt Project A was the project which he felt was going to be best, so that was the only project which was going to be looked into. Did Rickover's approach mean the USN stood a high risk of actually not being very good in a short-notice Cold War gone hot? Possibly. Hi, Paul Mark Johnson. Jeff Beale, Elmo ran the Brown Water Navy on Vietnam's coast and rivers. Got a lot of decorations. Yes, he did. He also managed to do all sorts of things with various napalming and Agent Orange and things to his own son, even. Galaxy Crowd. Give too much power. Gives you some future-proofing. That is true. So, Admiral Zheng He. Hello, Jack Ray. Dan America gives a lot of decorations full stop. Not quite as many as we'll be looking at today. Some give out far more. So, Zheng He. Okay. As I've already gone into my favourite hobby horse when it comes to looking at this particular gentleman. And he did, I'm fairly sure, he was, despite certain operations, a gentleman. And someone started referring to them, trying to do other things to them. I was sort of going, right, in how he sort of approaches the world. Zheng He is a very, very powerful, very, very able administrator and academic in his own time. That's how I would describe him. I would not describe him necessarily as an admiral. Golden Eagle, original name Mahe. Maher. I throw zoom. Oh yeah. Where did Zheng establish garrisons? Well, that's the interesting thing. He seems to have, on his route, established garrisons on various islands in the Philippines and established them as he went round. Now, the thing is, the garrisons, when I'm looking at it, I'm not sure if he's actually standing up garrisons or if he's just arming the local population of Chinese who already live there and the Chinese sort of, how do I put this? The Chinese trading community which is already set up there, rather than actually establishing garrison. It's a really... It's one of the things. He's been really sort of discovered in the early 20th century by Chinese authors, academics sort of bringing back and discussing him. And really has been discussed ever since. But it's been in the last 20 years he's become incredibly politicized. And this means that you have to be careful because a lot of the material you can read can be very, very wrong. I was very lucky. I was first introduced to him by Dr. Claire Norton, who was one of my lecturers at St Mary's, where I did my bachelor's. And she is what I would have called an Orientalist in terms of her research. And she's very, very good. I got her book. No. But I got that. Yeah. I haven't got her book inside me, but I do have this one, which is Reorient, Global Economy in the Asian Age by Andre Gundler Fank. And it's all about, well, pretty much what, during the age of Zheng He and sort of around that, what the economy was like, what they were doing, what the world was going on with. And it is really quite interesting when you're looking at this sort of scenario, how they do. This is why I say he's not an explorer. He's going on existing trading routes. He's going to existing places they know about. And he is formalizing some relationships. He's establishing others. He's certainly going and visiting places which we would consider Mecca, and sort of heading in the direction of Mecca and Medina. That sort of area in Africa. He's going down to Malawi. I think it's Malawi. I think that's where it's called now. And he's going down is going to the Horn of Africa and that area. And I think possibly some ships might go down and round the Cape of Good Hope, but I'm not 100% sure, because there's so much which is written which is patently not true, and yet there is evidence for that. I'll tend to obscure the evidence for the stuff which is true. It's really sodding annoying. It really is. And a lot of people jump on Zheng He to literally try and prove whatever point and whatever political statement they're making that they're the weak. And I find it incredibly annoying, because he's actually a really interesting character, but he isn't. You know, he's one of 7 Taijin who are sent, and he's the most senior of them. Jack, from introduction, I take the impression that Zheng He voyages would be compared to the Great White Fleet commanded by Secretary of State. Yeah, pretty much. That would be it. If you're in an American scenario, that's it. If you're in a British scenario, it would be the Viceroy of India going out. You know, it's like you are sending someone, a very senior politician, to head a massive force. They are going out there for diplomacy. They are going out there for garrisons. It's a huge, it's almost more of an administrative exercise in terms of going out than it is a exploration or a sort of, war is part of it, but it's not much of it. It's dealing with pirates. Won't terminologies be quite difficult due to the conceptions of world and the place of the Chinese emperor in it? So everyone was a subject of theirs. Trade was a tribute and gifts. That is part of the thing. That is part of the issues you have with it. You also have the part that, frankly, Zheng He is very, very powerful, but he is being put in command of this organization because he's powerful, but because of his situation, he's not a threat to the emperor. Tom Front, would you compare Zheng He and his fleet as comparable to East Indian companies, traders with guns? Not really. They're more official than that. That's a private enterprise. This is more of official. Golden Eagle, we all know about Gavin Menzies. We do, but I'm trying to avoid mentioning it. It's an interesting book, but Tai Jian, thank you, Golden Eagle. I can usually renounce and you to correct those ones because I do mangle them. Steph Thompson, Dr. Thoughts on the junk found in Marsh in Washington State? Do you think they crossed the Pacific? I think it's possible they did, but I'm not sure when they did. You see, the interesting thing is so many Chinese crossed the Pacific as part of the gold rush in San Francisco, when there was gold rush in America and various other things, that there is part of me which wonders if it's later or earlier. If it is that period or if it's a later one. There's got to be a lot of investigation before I'm going to really know more about it. So, yeah, reason of Monterey round stones with a hole in the center are thought to be Chinese anchors. Too plentiful to be natural. Thoughts to be ocean-going junks, regular stop? Possibly. Possibly. Well, that's the interesting thing. Jeff Beeler has pointed out, imagine if Zheng had met the Gamma. Well, that's the interesting thing. When the Gamma turns up certain places, they presume he's from the Chinese, because that's who they've seen before. So their frame of reference is that this is a big sailing ship sailed by white people or fair-skinned people in some of the coasts of Africa. And they must be from that power, and actually we're from a completely different power. Then quick reading of Zheng He, his wiki page. His grandfather completed the Hajj. Yes, again, this is part of the trouble, the issues that get caused with the scenario under Zheng He because of certain modern perceptions in China over Islam, and the issues they're having there and what's happening has caused issues indeed. But as I said, yes, like many navigators, he does seem to have been of the Muslim faith, which is not unusual because, again, if you consider the Islamic world at this point was one of the key trading networks in the world, and the Chinese federal, then the Islamic world sat in the middle, and then there was the European, and that was the trading network. So we'd go back, and the information went backwards and forwards, and maths and science and navigation went backwards and forwards, and you have all sorts of things going on. It's really kind of interesting. Anyway. Seth Johnson. Memory serves, a geologist was studying tidal tsunamis and how far they traveled on land. He was in the marsh and came across it. I think it was a good ways on land. Interesting. Well, I'll have to look into it more than I have already. So, right. Gorshkov. 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 Okay, this is the man who I spend half my life coming up against in certain things with people going, but Gorshkov says this, and Gorshkov was building the Soviet Navy. And I go, yes, but what Gorshkov is necessarily saying and what he is doing are two entirely different things, because Gorshkov is playing politics to get funding for his Navy. So he's saying that he has said this, so it must be a valuable point of perspective, is ignoring the fact of what he is actually saying it for. It is always the scenario when investigating and examining what some people say, you must understand not only what are they saying, but who are they saying it to and why are they saying it. These two things will build up the context and allow you to analyze what they are talking. Hi, Broadpain. Jeff Beeler, Gorshkov, how much would a Sildov's his town class? Well, seeing as the town class Gorshkov's Sildov's, the Sildovs start out before Gorshkov is in power. Gorshkov comes to power really under Khrushchev, but yes, to an extent they were his babies. Gorshkov is quite prominent in what produces this. Oh yeah. Well, you know, I have to say I do find it fun at the moment with the likes and the sort of shares, because suddenly I have found haven't had it until recently. I've suddenly YouTube started recommending my own videos to me, so that's cool, which is quite nice. But it was a bit of sort of shock. Anyway, Gorshkov. You have to understand what he is after. What he is after is building a strong navy. It is a strong navy that he wants to take out around the world, and he wants to spread communism, but he also wants to secure his nation. Gorshkov is actually, before he is a communist, is a patriot. And he's very good at manipulating the communist system. So because he's not necessarily, I would say in my opinion, the truest of true believers, it actually allows him to manipulate it far better than someone who is a true believer. And, you know, that bottom quote is what I tend to use as my example when I want to go to people, look, who's he saying this to? And the thing is, he makes that paragraph from page 260, and in a nice way, ships do not average, the average tonnage does not jump that dramatically. B, and this is the really important thing, he's making it to manipulate the Soviet army. He's making it so that the Red Army have to go, well, yes, of course, we won the Battle of Atlantic. Hang on. If the Red Army turns around and goes, but why else would the Germans be failing in the Battle of Atlantic, but if not for the good communist brothers of the Red Army bleeding them dry in Russia for the motherland? Why else not? Basically, it's a trap. It's a beautifully worded political trap. And it works. That's the thing. It works. If you look at the glory days of the Soviet Navy, they are built upon this. It's also, though, it's a trap for him because it means he has to pursue a very submarine-based force. That paragraph is used to undermine the case for aircraft carriers, to undermine the case for lots of things which he would like. Right, and interesting enough is the quote from page 1 to 2. So, in the nicest way, rather than lean forward and look weird like I'm doing this, I'm going to read it from the book. Because, you know, I can read it in its full technicolor. The essence of sea power of the state, in our view, is how far it is possible to make the most effective use of the world ocean, or, as is sometimes said, the hydrosphere of the earth, in the interest of the state as a whole. In the definition of the sea power of the state, we include, as the main components, possibilities for the state to study, explore the ocean, and harness its wealth, the status of the merchant and the fishing fleets, and their ability to meet the needs of the state. Also, the presence of a navy matching the interests of the state. Since antagonistic social systems exist in the world, of course the character of the use in the ocean and the degree of development of these components are ultimately determined by the level of economic and social development reached by the state and by the policies it pursues. For the Soviet Union, the main goal of whose policy is the building of communism and a steady rise in the welfare of its builders, sea power emerges as one of the important factors for strengthening its economy, accelerating scientific and technical development, and consolidating the economic, political, cultural, and scientific links of the Soviet people with the peoples and countries friendly to it. The material expression of that aspect of the sea power of the state, which is linked with the economy of the country, is offered by the merchant, fishing, and research fleets. The science of the ocean ensuring study and exploitation of its riches, the various branches of industry extracting and processing the gifts of the ocean, and also staffs of scientists, designers, engineers, and technicians, and the renowned army of seafarers with its diverse, complex, and prestigious branches. At the same time, sea power, naturally together with other components, also includes the ability of our armed forces to protect the country from threat of attack from the oceans. This aspect of sea power assumes greater importance the greater the military threat to our security. The material expression of this aspect of sea power, characterizing the real capacity of a country to ward off aggression from the oceans, is the constantly developing and increasingly sophisticated Soviet Navy called upon, in unison with our valiant armed forces, to guarantee the building of communism by decisively thwarting any attempts by aggressors to encroach on the great gains of the workers. That is pure political poetry. But it's also true. It could be taken from Corbett, Mahan, well, pretty much any of them, and probably was. I don't take this the wrong way. In the nicest way, there is this old saying that good writers write great lines, great writers steal shamelessly. This is great writing, and it's great politics, but yes, some of the points are definitely rebranding from what others have written. Redtail. What's the name for paying lip service to the communist system in a paragraph or two? The difference between a squirrel and a rat. To an extent, yes, but he pays for it the whole way through. He threads it the whole way through constructively. He's basically building a book, and when you read this, he's building a book which is designed to make it impossible for anyone within the communist system to attack it. And it is interesting to note this does take place after the Cuban Missile Crisis, but before the high point of the Soviet Navy. He includes all sorts of things in here that are quite interesting in terms of his analysis. Basically, he is making the economic, the social, the political, the strategic, the military, every single case he can is summed up in this book to build the Soviet Navy. We talked earlier about Rickover and his lack of future-proofing. The fact that he was designing a system which couldn't survive when couldn't really carry on when he was no longer there. This is Gorshkov, future-proofing. He is providing any successor, any future Soviet admiral with ammunition from which to use to deploy in debates with the army and the air force to get the funding needed. This is what he's doing. He is 20 years into a nearly 30-year building project on the Soviet Navy, and he is making sure that in the next 10 years he is building it to successfully work for the future. Jeff Beeler, once Magellan crossed the Pacific, East Asia has the capacity to sail east and might have looked for new trade opportunities. They do send trade missions to Europe. No, they do. They send them all over the place. Jermac, everyone does. Jermac, Jeff Beeler, I would have told them SSN hunting for convoys and boomers and escorts there, and SSGN Oscar, for example, being sub-equivalent of 222 regiments. Yeah, probably. Philip Seahouse. Hello, Philippe. Gorshkov's new Soviet surface navy also manages to distract NATO from the natural contact points in northern and southern Europe to quite far away places as Indian and southern Atlantic. Yes. There is a great archive document in the British National Archives in Kew, which is absolutely beautiful. And it is the British intelligence translation given to the Admiralty of the Soviet report on German naval operations in World War II. And it is entirely about how the German Navy managed to distract the Royal Navy and spread them around the world with surface raiders, and how they managed to dilute their principal effort of securing and the blockade on the North Sea, which allowed them to get ships out and out into the North Atlantic, because they had to have cruisers down in the South Atlantic and down Indian Ocean and out in China hunting for surface raiders. And that is entirely the Soviet perspective, because for the Soviet perspective, if you can keep one carrier group back, one of the operational carrier groups back from the Northern Barrier, anything you can keep away from the Northern Barrier is a big loss, because it cuts down on the NATO strength and increases Soviet relative strength. And that's what I want. C1. Lots of USNR research and exploration admirals. Engineering tactical research in a way more important than fleet action. Yeah, to an extent there is. Donald Fritz. What's the Soviet Navy's role in the Pacific War near the end of World War II when they jumped in on the fun on Japan? Just exist, or did it actually have a mission? They tried to have a mission. They did try to have a mission. Remember, there's an interesting point, because in January 1939, Japan and the Soviet Union are pretty much at war in the Far East. So if Japan starts a war with, this is going to be looked at in the Tsingtao, starts a war with the Royal Navy in the thing, then they might well find out that they would end up fighting a war against the Soviet Union, the British, and the Americans allied together. Which has a very interesting scenario, because would Hitler declare war or anything? It's going to be, to back up his up, it's going to be an interesting topic looking at Tsingtao in August, if it goes hot. Jermac, at one point, USSR had the subtypes for everything, from Greenwater Keelers, Sub-Interceptors Alphas, to Armageddon Typhoons. Yeah, well, that was pretty much their plan. So you went, well, plus Italian and French contribution below the surface research and other. Yes, there's also things. So that's right. How far would you say that the post-Soviet Russian naval strategy has continued to change from Gorshkov's time? We're going to get into that in a bit. Philip Sales. Soviet client states in Asia and Africa see Gorshkov's ships as military reassurance and protection. Before this, these countries were by themselves. Exactly. It's you go out and you're being friendly with people. You are making... It's classic naval diplomacy. It's what Britain had spent the whole of the 20s and 30s and most of the 1880s, 1890s doing around the world. Going around there, being friends, being presence. Presence matters. Jeff Wheeler, how much is Russian expansion and foreign policy driven by the need for ice-free naval bases? In Gorshkov's minds, heavily. In everyone else's, less so. Mainly because they think we have one. The trouble is, it's the Black Sea. Very, very not a fun place. Calvin Gasman, there was a point there on that Red Navy had SSGNs and NATO had not yet. Yes, and to an extent, the NATO has always been far more reluctant to have SSGNs than the Soviet Navy. Why? Because for most of the Allied navies, they had aircraft carriers. And the question was always which one is better? Well, on D1, the SSGN is best. But on D+, D2 and onwards, the aircraft carrier is easier to rearm, so the aircraft carrier is best. Excuse me a second. Donna Fritz, they've announced a new carrier, but it looks very odd. There's just an artist drawing of it. Do not ever listen to the Russian announcements of aircraft carriers. They always look odd and they don't actually have anything. Fred says, someone's biography spends some juicy paragraphs noting on the negative effect of potential Soviet naval bases in Angola and Guinea-Bissau. Yeah, they were not fun. They were problematic on them. Bernard, Kiev aviation cruisers seem poor warships but brilliant presence ships. Bingo. Bless. Cold War planners expecting a day two of war. Actually, that's the interesting thing. The Cold War goes through a couple of phases because first of all you think, okay, well it's going to go nuclear very quickly. Then after a while everyone goes, will it though? Will it go nuclear that quickly? Because, we both have nuclear weapons. Neither side wants to end up being head of a parking lot. And as long as you're not actually fighting inside Russian territory or maybe French territory, British territory, or American territory, and you're still fighting, would you launch nuclear weapons? If the forces all collapse and that's your only option, yes, that's the problem. But if your forces are still fighting, see, it becomes a complicated scenario. It's an interesting scenario. Gorshkov is one of those interesting people, and there is another quote in here which I didn't put in this, but which I will read anyway. Which chapter is it again? Hmm. 213. The main tasks of land forces, as is known, has always been the destruction of the opposing foe in order to take over his territories and possessions. In a given case, the tasks of the operations of land forces in the purely military sense might be figuratively expressed by the phrase soldier against soldier. This is not so in the sphere of the Navy. As well as the task of fighting an enemy fleet is also faced with tasks associated with operations against territories and groupings of troops therein. Thus the formula soldier against soldier, translated in terms of a fleet, takes on the form of fleet against and fleet against shore. The correlation of these two tasks throughout history has naturally not always been constant. Among the operations of the fleet against fleet, one may include battles and operations to destroy ships of the enemy at sea and in the bases, and the struggle on oceanic and sea communications, disruption and defense. A vivid example of this is provided by campaigns, the operations and battles of the First World War, in the course of which fleets acted little against the shore, but history also provides many examples of active operations of the fleet against shore. Traditional was staging of sea landings of various sizes and the delivery of strikes of ship armament on targets located on shore. The new modes of operations of a fleet against shore again consist in delivering of a strike of carrier aviation on ground targets and groupings of troops, and in destruction by nuclear missile strikes from submarines of land targets of great strategic and economic importance. Since the goals of a war were achieved mostly by taking over the territory of the enemy, successful operations of a fleet against the shore brought a better result than the operations of a fleet against fleet. In the first case, the fleet solved a direct territorial task, whereas in second, the victory of the enemy's fleet merely created the prerequisites for the latter solution of territorial tasks. Is it me, or does that sound exactly like Corbett? But it's worthwhile thinking about. Anyway, I'm going to move on to Zumwalt, because so far he's turned up 3 times, and to be honest, as a person, I prefer Zumwalt to Gorshkov. Steve White, Kalingol incident got me in trouble with the professor once. Even now, not known too well. Do not embarrass your professors. Bad. Good professors don't mind. Good professors go, fine, let's hear about it. Or, oh, really? Ah, yes. Or there's always the classic one. You can always deploy the professor go, true. But I'm trying to keep with examples which are far better known and far easier for the rest of the students to research. But if you can find up individual examples which are, and you can find sufficient information, you're more than welcome to use them in your papers. In fact, that will be very interesting for me to read. Thank you. Now, can we move on? We'll now move on to the next question so we can concentrate with the group of the students. But good idea, and thank you. We've all gone through the same training. We know how to handle it. If we can handle it properly, it's good for the student. You can reward the student, but you can also avoid the problems of disrupting class. But you have to handle it properly. See what? Well, he flippantly said Russia and Japan never fought after 1905. I flippantly replied that his reading was lacking. He never said anything, but his look at me still burns to this day. In which case, actually, don't take this the wrong way, but he sounds like an idiot. In nicest way, if he's supposed to be teaching that and he doesn't know they've been fighting, they had full-on wars in the 1930s. They were fighting one in 1939. In fact, Stalin refused to invade Poland till after he'd finished the war with Japan. And that's why the Siberian troops were so good and were kept back. They were there to cover against an attack by Japan. The reason the Siberian Corps of the Soviet Army was as strong as it was is they'd been fighting the Japanese. They were battle-hardened veterans already before World War II even began. Sorry, I will get off my hobby horse now. I'm going to Admiral Elmo Zumwalt. Elmo Zumwalt spends a lot of time around junior officers and senior NCOs, especially in Vietnam with the Green Water forces, because the Green Water vessels are often commanded by junior officers and senior NCOs. And the first thing he does when he gets into high office is start issuing Z-grams, which basically, if you read through them, they are the basis of most modern navies seem to be functioning on this sort of role. The Royal Navy had already, thanks to the divisional structure, got there to an extent, and I do sometimes wonder if Zumwalt had actually looked into, paid attention, had done some study of that before he starts starts implementing his Z-grams. But they go a bit further, the Z-grams, in many ways. And they're all about empowering junior officers and senior NCOs to manage upwards and to manage their careers and to develop their careers. And he wants to give them a chance. Desron 26 is a classic example of this. In every single post in those destroyers, you have the officers one rank and the NCOs one rank below what they normally would be. And they are all the best chosen for it. And it allows the fleet to really turn into a high thing. And I was talking with one of my friends in the US Navy recently, and he went, oh yes, we're talking about another person we know, and he's been put in an LCS. And I said, well, that seems to me as sort of a little strange, because he's a very good, very smart young officer. And he said, well, no, it's perfectly natural. What you do is if you want to work out how to use something in a war, you put your best young officers in it, and they will fight it and work it out and work out how to fix it. And I went, don't even realizing it, but you're repeating the mantra of Elmo Zumwalt. Probably doesn't even realize it. Possibly does, actually, but probably doesn't, because it's forgotten in the Navy so much because of what came after in terms of his failed run for Congress and the fact he was called Elmo, and because of how Rickover had dominated the Navy and dominated it in terms of its structures. But Zumwalt builds up this whole thing, and it's interesting. The high-low fleet mix, the Oliver Hazard Perry class, is remembered as being really good. The Pegasus remembered as good, but not produced enough. And as I mentioned, the sea control ship causes all sorts of issues. But he's really very, very cool. Shomak, my lit teacher, who used to be a history teacher, said that South Africa was a Dutch colony during World War II until I corrected him. Yeah. Yes, I'm going to actually go and check your comment, Stafford, because, well, I can. With the new system, when I get it working properly, I can actually do all sorts of little things. As long as I can't do too much. I have to be quite careful about it in terms of some things, and I have to make sure that is on quiet. Yes, as I said, you were not sure if the Z grams were tried out during his Brown Water Command experience. They were. But also, I wanted to get into more of the Z grams, so I'm going to quickly get them up as well. Now, I put up... Did I manage to get 4 or 5 onto there? Okay, I know what I'm going to do now on this one. Settings. Now, hopefully that stays a bit longer now. Hopefully. And doesn't go jump on, but we can always hope. So, list of Z-grams. His second Z-gram was convened a junior officer retention study group. His first telegram around to the Navy is his remarks upon taking office as a Chief Naval Officer. 13 days later, he sends out his second, on the 14th of July 1970, and this is convening a junior officer retention study group. On the 22nd of July, it's cryptographic procedures and policies. On the 30th of July, it authorizes 30 days leave for officers and with orders for a permanent change of station. That's PCS. And also on the 30th of July 1970, instituted a test program aboard 6 ships to extend to first-class petty officers the privilege of officers and chief petty officers to keep civilian clothing aboard ships for wearing on liberty. Everything going on there is about making it a retention. Zumwalt is obsessed with retaining good quality officers and good quality NCOs. He doesn't see the point in training up a high quality navy only to lose people because you are making them deal with petty little problems and you aren't giving them what are basic privileges which someone of their rank and training really deserves. And that's his critical thing. Right. Tom Frotman. Erasmus of Formula, also known as Saint Neville, was a Christian saint and martyr who died C303. He is venerated as a patron saint of sailors. I know. So was Aaron Plum. Albazatsky, what's his high-low fleet mix? I will talk about that in a second. Jeff, you see Elmo's Navy in Apocalypse Now. There you do. Dave Room. Zumwalt went from being promoted to Rear Admiral to CNO in 5 years. Yeah, he did. He was good at Fleet Command. Better saying, reminds me of one time I got into an argument with archaeology press over if Germany could outbuild warships in during World War II. If Germany had all of occupied European resources in industry. Theoretically, but it'd be problematic. Because producing a standardized fleet would be quite difficult. That would take a lot of retooling. But we'll get back to this one. So Zumwalt is recognized that tech is fine, but needs good sailors to operate. Yes, and what's disturbing is we're still having the same debates 50 years later. He also wanted a high-low fleet mix, and his idea was you would have a large number of low-tech ships and a small number of high-tech ships, which were the core of the fleet. So he wanted nuclear carriers, but he also wanted conventional carriers because they were cheaper and lower tech. This is his big fights with Rickover. He was talking about sea control ships. That was his idea. But also, he would like Arleigh Burkes, but he also liked Oliver Hazard Perrys. He'd like Ticonderogas and Oliver Hazard Perrys. He would like lots of Pegasus hydrofoils, which are sort of high-tech, but they are simple enough they could be built. He wanted 100 of those, and he wanted them positioned around the world at key places. Stafford Thompson, history repeats or lessons not learnt? Veteran, it wasn't a derailment, so don't worry. It was an interesting topic to quickly dive into. History, it's more a case of the lesson has taken years to drive home. Zumwalt learns the lesson in his experience as he's going to career, and especially when he's dealing with the Brown Water Navy and the issues that's looked at in Vietnam. But it's also a fact that you have what I call the Rickover effect on what the US Navy's building. So it ends up focusing on Burkes, on Nimitz's, on all these high-tech, these high solutions, these really, really excellent, top world-class, top-of-the-line options. And so you're focusing on that, and then it's only after trying with the LCS and then going, hang on, this hasn't quite worked. Why has it not worked? They sort of rediscovering Zumwalt. And this is why I feel, as I said, the Zumwalt class are almost inappropriately named. Because if Zumwalt had been building the Zumwalt class, had been in charge of these days, FFGX would have been a while back instead of LCS. More than likely, knowing him, and LCS would have been a 2-ship program. LCS would have been one ship, FFGX would have been the other ship, so there'd been a cheap one and an LCS, so it'd been the high-low mix. And it would have been a case of Zumwalt would have been a high-low mix in itself, in that he'd gone, right, here is all the advanced tech which we can, super advanced tech we can, the Mark 53 VLSs, all the other stuff that's built into them, which is really, really cool. Railguns, we need to build them so they can take railguns, but they aren't going to be ready in time, so let's go with the advanced gun system and develop that now, and then keep the railgun under development until it's ready. And it's sort of a mixture. The high-low mix is all about having your high-tech core to build your fleet around. When I talked about my dream fleet, and I put out that video to celebrate 4,000 subscribers, I had my core, which was my carrier and my LHDs, and my destroyers and my Type 26s, my Type 45s, or whatever their successors, Type 26s. That's my core, my fighting core. My rivers, my Type 31s, are my low-level mixes and lows. My Bay classes. They are my force multipliers. They are my presence multipliers. My literal strike ships are my presence multipliers. They are out there around the world. They are the cheap mass well, the cheaper, not particularly cheap, but the cheaper mass that allows my core to be really strong and really well trained, so that when I need to fight a war, boom, you've got to face this lot. And in the meantime, you've got this keeping presence and keeping eye and keeping things ticking over. Is Jeff Bueller, the failure to replace the Perrys is huge. Yeah, well, welcome to FFGX now. Steam White, somewhat. Can tell pictures of his period heading Navy. Brought back beards and all younger officers had them. Higher ranked and older officers grumbled a lot then. They did. He brought back a lot of things. The thing is, the high-low mix is one of the reasons the US Air Force built both the F-15 and F-16 about the same time. Bingo! Turns out the US Air Force was listening more than the US Navy. You also managed to get it with Air Group because you had F-14s and F-18s. Danny Freeman, everyone loves the hard science. A test that gives a number over softer stuff. Seeing a lot of medicine. The test here says yes, but the history doesn't fit. Jeff Hiller, in a personal war college forum, still around, and how effective was it? It is still around, and most of these things are still around in some form or other. They've been, some of their programs have been evolved, but they're still around. And this is why I say he's got the legacy and he has won the long-term battle, because a lot of his reforms were kept, they weren't changed, they kept going and kept going, and they have generated, and now the leaders who are coming through are not just the leaders who went through when he was in charge, or they're the fourth, fifth, sixth complete generation to go through those changes. And this is why, as I said, Zumwalt has Rickover won control and has built the Navy and shaped the Navy since for this period. But I think the future of the Navy belongs to what Zumwalt was developing. In terms of Zumwalt's reforms, especially the Officer Corps, have now filtered through and generated, and now there is enough of a body of support that they might actually get there and might actually achieve it. Albert Zasky, this looks like the LCS is Rickover's trial done. Yeah, that pretty much is it, as I've been saying. As the so like the Iran at the end of World War II, a handful of high-end capital units and a massive swarm of Bath-class corvettes? Probably. Vision. Some of this on the Zumwalt was covered, I think, in a recent essay article in US Army Proceedings on keeping building up and non-commissioned officers in the USN. Yes, I think it was. Because Zumwalt was the first really CNO to make a big effort when it came to non-coms. There are others previously had tried and were involved, but Zumwalt is really kind of interesting, and he also looks at all sorts of things to do, race relations and other things, and he is really pushes on them. He gets into trouble because he does actually, I think, quite a senior officer, who's quite a decorated officer, because he finds out he's not been treating crew of an ethnic minority correctly, and he just goes, "You're gone. Bye-bye. I don't care who's your sponsor is, you're out." And he's very keen on building a service which is going to promote ability and retain ability. Those are his two things. They have to promote and retain ability, because if they don't, it's not going to be useful. Calvin Gassman, the OHP areas were rather high-tech in their age, with a wide variety of capabilities. Yes, they were, but compared to other products, it's going to sound strange. It's high tech, but it's low risk, and it can be produced in large numbers. So that's the thing about the Oliver Hazard Perrys. They might have some sort of tech. They might have some tech in them which is high tech, but compared to other systems, they're not the highest. But they can be built. It's high tech, not exquisite tech. Rickover is pushing for exquisite tech, so perhaps that's what I should be saying. Perhaps I should be calling the exquisite high mix, but Zumwalt called it the high-low mix, because that's what he's doing. You've got the exquisites, and you've got what are called the comparatively low techs to provide it. Jeff Miller, should have been cheaper and less bleeding edge. Yeah. Giving personnel a small amount of control massively improves morale. The British Army did this in World War I with allowing troops to put on plays. Yeah. Zumwalt did the same sort of things, it seems. Yeah. You did? Phil said, does having a high-low mix put too much political focus on a much higher relative cost of the high component? Is this why the RN sold off their conventional powered subs to keep the SSNs? Not particularly. In the case of the SSKs being sold off, they were told they were cutting the small class, and it was easy. They already had more SSNs than they did SSKs, so getting rid of them gets rid of entire training stream. If you cut a few SSNs, you still have to have all the training, all the certificates, all the things for nuclear submarines. If you cut the remaining SSKs, then you can cut an entire training stream, an entire design stream, entire infrastructure base. You can basically cut it all and make your life easier, and that's what they did. I'm not saying it wasn't sensible. That's what they did. That's wrong. When Kabita says Zumwalt wanted 4 new ships, he controls it: Pegasus, OHP, Pegasus class, and OHP FFGs. What was the 4th? Well, how do I put this? The 4th is an interesting concept because there's lots of debate over what the 4th was. The Pegasus are his patrol ships. The Oliver Hazard ferries are his frigates. He wants sea control ships. What's missing? Think about it. What is missing? Under the sea. I have a feeling it was SSKs, but there is all sorts of structure. He had an idea for a cheaper destroyer. He had an idea for this. I think he was looking at long range. He was looking at SSKs, but honestly, there is enough of a debate and enough people go. But this document's just they're looking at this, and this one looks at this. That I can't be 100% sure. I'm not enough. Let's put it this way: I am not familiar enough with some of the subtext around Pentagon and these sort of reports yet that I can say for 100% certainty. Also, Seawolf subs versus Virginia, Mark, makes the same idea, it seems. That was actually eye-opening. Yeah, the Seawolf are exquisite. The Virginias are high. And that's the thing, although the Virginias are starting to go out. It's curious to see that many shipyards that build OHPs are no longer producing military ships for the US Navy. That's because those yards can't build the exquisite level. This is the other thing. If you are building the high-tech rather than the exquisite, or the low rather than the high, you can spread out to more yards. It's excellent. Why do you think the Royal Navy is so keen on the Type 31s? Why do you think they've de-risked it and put into the systems they have to try and make it low so they can spread it about different yards? Admittedly, they haven't really much, but, you know, they have. Go on, Eagle. Whose idea was it to do the Zumwalt class DDGs? They've been long in the work, but naming them Zumwalt, well, he's one of the most popular CNOs in history. Right, give me a second. I'm just gonna. Someone's calling. By gum. Let's see. See, my son got Captain Khaki'd, which is non-commissioned officers wearing uniforms and in charge of the groups. In his case, flight deck crew. Interesting. Going on. If they're gonna do if they're going to do Zumwalt ZGGs, they might as well build battleships. They're only 14,000 tons. They're not quite battleships. I prefer the Type 26 to Type 31. If you have to get on one, which would win in a 1v1 fight? What's your take? Honestly, depends on the range. If they're at normal ranges, then the Type 26 should win. If they have about the same amount of missiles and air defense and all these things, and similar electronic weights, but it does have a 4.5. It does going to have a 4.5 or 5-inch deck gun. But if they're at close range, in let's say a harbour next to each other, and it just fight, then the Type 31 would probably win, because that could swivel a 57mm, a 40mm, and two 40mm on the Type 26 before the Type 26 could probably start firing, which could blast the living daylights out of the Type 26. Honestly, though, you need both. That's the thing. You can't afford to build enough Type 26s to do every single job the Royal Navy needs to be doing. You can afford to build some more Type 31s, though. Alright. And Zumwalt is, well, one of the other things of him that I looked up and I was looking into quite closely, which I found sort of interesting, is in his Z-Gram 35 on 25th September 1970, and by the way, on 25th September 1970, well, he produced 3 of them. Number 34, number 35 authorised alcoholic beverages in barracks and beer vending machines in senior enlisted barracks. So that was quite popular. But basically, between the 21st and 28th of September, he produced a lot. 26 to 38. He managed to get through 57. Actually, let's see. Okay. He sends out 70 telegrams in a very short amount of time. He dies in 2000. Which is quite, is still something I find a bit sort of strange. I always find it strange when when my life overlaps with people who are so important in history. He retires from the Navy in 1974. Yeah. But he does so much to build up what is the modern U.S. Navy in terms of its heart and its core, its personnel, its people. He's very much about putting sailors first. Jeff Miller, who's Type 26? UK or RCNRN? Different capabilities and all. I was just going off the UK ones. So, yeah. Anyway, let's go from Zumwalt to the guy who's causing so many people to have panic attacks on the moment. Wu Shengli. Wu Shengli causes his changes to the Chinese Navy and his effect on securing funding and support for some very risky ventures. Hello, it is Francis' fault. Basically have caused a huge number of panic attacks in the Western world. And we know very, very little about him. This is the point. We know very, very little about him. Philip Sells. The fact that Babcock ended up using a proven 6,000 to 7,000 ton hull for the Type 31 does seem to pull out to go all out against the declared prospect of it being a mid-sized exportive design as compared to Type 26. Not really, because the Britain was looking for a ship which you could forward deploy around the world, and the trouble is a forward deployed ship is not going to be small. And that's the thing. We're doing forward deployment with Type 23 at the moment, and it's proving issues. When you want a forward deployed ship to basically act as a light cruiser did, you're going to end up with a light cruiser sized hull. Bandholm, Wu Shengli, the guy that most likely is responsible for making the Western navies to get funding. Well, that is it, certainly. He is certainly someone who has read his Gorshkov. He's no longer technically in charge of the Chinese Navy, but he is definitely still a guiding spirit around there. He managed to achieve quite a lot in his time, and he managed to be very popular with Xi Jinping and various other political leaders in China. It always interests me that he is quite so successful in getting the Navy as constructed as he does, but doesn't manage to get on with his leader as a senior role in the Chinese defense establishment, i.e. Minister of Defense or Deputy Minister of Defense. And I have a little theory of this, because, as I said, the RAF's nightmare would have been Admiral Henderson becoming First Sea Lord post-Second World War after having been a victorious fleet commander. It just wouldn't have been good politically for them because he was so good at playing the politics game. I have a feeling that in this way Wu Shengli's career was capped because the People's Liberation Army were very much worried that if he got any higher, their how do I put this, their eminence might be in jeopardy. That he's making such a good case for the Navy that... Now, in many ways, again, I would consider him more an administrator than a naval officer. He has had some naval experience, he has been to sea, he has served and all these things. But I would say, whilst not fulfilling quite the Zheng He brief, he definitely does fit the sort of that traditional sort of role of you have officers who are for fighting at lower ranks, but for senior ones it's about far more. It's about the diplomacy, the strategy of it. China news. China's former Navy chief, Wu Le's face audit assessment comes as Communist Party anti-corruption watchdog introduced rules for mandatory audits of all serving and retired top brass. I'm sure he will face it. I'm sure that he has enough political opponents that there will be a lot of people after him for it. Whether or not he actually gets anything comes for him properly is another matter. Philip Sells is racing to build a Western Navy as capable or as numerous as the Chinese, even moderately conceivable cost-wise. Well, that's the trouble. We don't really know how capable the Chinese ships are. We know they look capable, but as one of my excellent colleagues pointed out when we were discussing science fiction ships, the question on bilge pumps, the question is, and that was, I think that was Drac. The question is, are they actually as capable as they look? And what are we building to fight? His name sounds like no victory. I think I'm going to keep with Wu Sheng Li. No victory. Sounds a bit cruel. So I think I'm going to keep mangling his name, Golden Eagle. Thank you for explaining. Eric Ogden, funny fact, President Xi Jinping lived in a flat in Norway when he was a young student. China had an exchange program, so with several Western countries to learn about culture. Doesn't surprise me. A lot of the Chinese elite have come abroad and have been going around the world. But getting back to, is it racer? Is it Western Navy capable of numerous Chinese, even moderately conceivable cost-wise? It's achievable, yes, but it depends how much money you're prepared to put into it. It depends how much money you're prepared to put into it, and what you're going to have to sacrifice to put that money into it. That's the problem. The money has to come from somewhere. Stafford Thompson, Chinese steel is cheap for a reason. How well do the ships fare in storms? Well, that's the interesting thing. So far, I haven't really seen much Chinese operations in the deep South Atlantic in terms of their fleet operations, in terms of major warships going around there. They seem to keep, in my experience and studies of them, they've kept mostly within what I would call the equatorial bands. So you have sort of the equator going around, and you have the tropics. And they sort of keep, broadly speaking, for the vast majority between those areas. So Jinping was also forced to announce his father when Mao died, who was second in command, then shot. Yeah. See, Mike, is it an Asiatic thing? Japanese Navy, I believe, were mainly at war versus the Japanese Army. People's Liberation Army fears its Navy more. Well, to an extent, it's more of a case of they're trying to fight for funding and they're trying to fight for presidents. And with the Navy, they don't have much of a role in the South China Sea. With the Army, they don't have much of a role in the South China Sea. And so if the battle becomes the South China Sea, they're in trouble. If it's Taiwan and the East China Sea, they're involved. If it's India or Russia, they're involved. So as long as the South China Sea is kept as the focus of operations, and it's all focused all about the 9-dash line and getting supplies from around the world to come to the Chinese economy to keep them going, that's a problem. Go on, Eagle. Major General Jin Yan traveled to the US on an old People's Liberation destroyer in 2005 and suffered through heavy storms, and the vessel was fine. Yeah. You certainly don't recall correctly. Xi's father lived into the 2000s. Interesting. I'm honestly not getting involved in it because Xi Jinping's father has never interested me much, so I haven't bothered to look it up. I will be honest about this one. I'm more interested in the things which float off their coast than not necessarily the family relatives of some of their leaders. Although I should probably look it up. It should be part of it. So Thompson, tough luck. So if they're more fair weather than the USN in 20s and 30s, numbers might be all they have. I wouldn't say necessarily, because as Golden Eagle pointed out, they have gone through some heavy storms. But there is heavy storms for those sort of tropic to tropic regions, and there is heavy storms for getting towards the poles. And that's the thing. But we don't know how thick they're building their hulls. So, as Disruption is quite right that high quality specialist steel is difficult, if you build your hull thick enough, but that's going to affect your weight and performance, You can sometimes get away with other things. Stomach, I think it's a dictatorship thing. Involved. Go on, England. He was travelling from Shanghai into Seattle. Yes, but I wouldn't. Okay. Depends how you route it. If he's going direct, then yes, he's gone fairly high up. But it's, again, and this is going to sound something. It's one of the things I've noticed also is that as the Chinese pace of building up, the pace of construction has built up, I've got more worried about their ships. But you know, Admiral Wu was named PLA commander in 2006. Zhang Dingfa is also quite an interesting character. But broadly speaking, there's a lot of interest when you're looking at these officers, and there isn't much information out there about them. So this is one of the reasons why you have to start thinking, what are they building the Navy for? And as you'll know from listening to us, quite a lot of the analysis I do is I look at ship designs and I work back to what were they actually building them for. Not what are they saying they're building them for, but what they're building the ship, what are they building it for? Is the reality. Are they building it for show? I.e., is it all lines and positions, or are their guns positioned correctly? Do they look like they're going to be good, or are they actually good? Paul Johnson, didn't China get a lot of high-quality steel-making technology when they brought British steel? Wasn't that the Indians who brought British steel? Paul Johnson. Philip Shaw. I've always had a very strong reservations on Western press repeated doom arguments over the risk represented by the ownership of the South China Sea by China. It's not so much a doom as it's not their territory. It's other nations. And the trouble is the precedent it sets. Because if you let them set the precedent that they can take those territories away, even though they're UN mandated by the UNCLOS, the UN, the sea, the very sort of the UN's own maritime organization that looks at these sort of scenarios and gives these rules and puts out things like the exclusive economic zones. Then you set the precedent that anyone can. For Britain, that's a problem because of the Falkland Islands. And Gibraltar with Spain. For America, that's a problem. For Canada, that's a problem. It's always a problem if you let someone set the precedent. So the South China Sea isn't so much a problem of, oh, China controls it. That's a problem. That's only a problem if there's a war. If it's peacetime and they're still allowing ships to go through, that doesn't matter, then it's okay, you can deal with it. What is a problem is the fact that they've taken control of it from other people by just using might is right as a philosophy. And the trouble is that sets precedents which, frankly, is not good for world scenario. Philip said, the percentage of sea cargo traffic in Chinese hands is growing anyway, as European countries are doing. Again, not really. There's a lot of sea traffic going on, and yes, it's growing a percentage, but it doesn't mean the number of hulls is growing. That just means the number of stuff going around the seas is growing, and that's interesting scenario of globalism. There's more stuff going out there, and yes, so total numbers are going up. And one side is increasing faster than the other, so its relative percentage is going up, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's this side's dwindling and that side's getting massive. It just means this is growing fast, and this one, the whole thing's going up. Jeff Beeler, when is Queen Elizabeth due in the Far East on its what I'm calling Robin Cruise? Next year. Paul Johnson, Yingyi bought and paid 50 million for it. Sorry, for some reason HMS Southampton just opened up full screen in front of me. It happens sometimes. I think it was actually HMS Glasgow. We'll leave that to one side. Now, what? Yep. In November 2020, in March 2020, the Chinese built British Steel. Yeah, that might be interesting. There might be a similar scenario happening there as with Huawei, because I think the government still retains some interest in British Steels. So Thompson, Doswell, when paying people off and copying ideas don't work, then diplomacy fails, and we return to, are you hard enough? Are you really? Yeah, that's the trouble. The Danish view is the SES could be used the same way Denmark used to trade into the Baltic, taxing trade in a way that others couldn't really do much about it. Yeah, that is a big problem if they try to. That's why we keep the freedom of seas going. Freedom of seas, just because you're dependent upon sea lanes, open sea lanes, in nicest way, so was Germany prior to World War I and prior to World War II. So was France for most Napoleonic wars when they were trying to trade with the world and keep their economy going. Just because you're dependent on something doesn't mean you're going to be logical and actually deal with it. And it's one of the interesting things when you're talking about India versus China. Because the Indian army would be fighting a very nasty campaign in mountains, but the Indian Navy would be fighting a lovely campaign in an Indian Ocean right next to their ports going, no Chinese trade going this way. So it says, I think finally China is more and more the origin or the destination of ship cargoes crossing the SCS. Britain's strategic materials production capabilities is a tricky thing to judge. I don't think the UK has built an MBT for ages either. I'd worry more about sensors and weapons than hulls. To an extent, yes. Definitely, to an extent. Town class HMS Southampton or Kinky anyway? No, it was town class HMS Southampton. She just pops up occasionally. I have no idea why. Bad home. The Baltic only had one entry. This is many. That's why we're worried about trying to control them all. It's all about the brinkmanship, the ability to wage a war without fighting war, combination of show, threat, and actual strength. Bingo, and it's all therefore comes from Goshkov. Who's a fun guy. If you want to, I do recommend looking up the books and trying to read it. Sam Thompson. Yeah, Stuart Crow, there is nothing very high-tech about UK steel manufacturing. It's not like BAE or Rolls-Royce. Yes, we do buy most of the highly specialist steel from Sweden and Norway. It's heavily research intensive, explicitly considering new production methods that need to become greener. Yeah. Benefits. I mean, a land war with India and China isn't going to be will be an exciting adventure for anyone on the ground. No, it really isn't. Speaking of territory, can you do a video on Hugo Grotius and neutral rights and the history of freedom of the seas? As an American, I'm familiar with the US's historical arguments, less about the UK. I can probably look into that. Please, I would say please tweet that at me or send it on Discord or something, because then I have a better record of it than these messages sometimes. But please do that. Sure, during World War I, the economists were saying that the war would end because Europe would run out of money. Mm-hmm. Yeah, economists are always fun when it comes to war. See, with Panama's lock size increase, we'll get greater numbers of larger hull ships prevail. Then with world docks and ports must grow in relation. Yeah, that's usually what happens. Jerison, BA systems had, and then ships will grow even more, and then it'll become cheaper to go around rather than through the locks again, so they have to make the locks wider again. Jeff Beeler, who are China's allies in Southeast Asia? That is the problem. Do they have allies or don't they have allies? Are those allies in America? You have issues with some nations. You're not quite. They can't be quite sure because will they be allies or won't they be allies? Have they managed to buy enough of the political classes to have them as allies? Jeremy, about topic of level Chinese metallurgy, they still have problems with indigenous jet engines. That they do. Trent Alenka, hello Trent. India is the only land power in Asia that can trade China 1-for-1 in infantry manpower on a 4 years basis. To be fair, they can probably actually last longer than China. Remember, they haven't had the one-child policy. Juicy Fusion, Ted has brought some Huawei stuff. Rogers and Bell did not. We are now considering what the fate of Telus' Huawei parts will be. China hasn't tapped. Abilities. I feel comparing the SES to Maharan's carrying or arms Mediterranean is a disingenuous way to try to make a peripheral area somewhat relevant to US audiences. I think in the nicest way, if you think the South China Sea is peripheral, then you've got a lot of problems. South China Sea is only peripheral if you are thinking that all you have to do to fight a war with China is wage a war over Taiwan or in the Pacific. South China Sea is critical to the Chinese economy in terms of the trade going through it. If you control it, as you said yourself earlier, if they control it, does it really matter? Well, if you control it, it matters a lot to them. It also means you can do things like stop them going further east. And that's the thing. If we want to fight a war, we need to contain them. So that means the South China Sea, containing at least, is going to be critical. And protecting Australia, Singapore, all sorts of areas will become critical. So the South China Sea is not peripheral. You know, in the nicest way, the South China Sea is pretty much what the Americans under MacArthur were fighting with the Japanese over, or sort of the islands and the fights of the Philippines and up through Papua New Guinea and all these things are over. It's part of the area for war fighting, and it's part of the area for the context of the scenario. It's also potentially an area where you could have the Chinese put their ballistic missile submarines. Anyway. So let's get on to the more interesting one of all these officers. And the one who, frankly, I find the most interesting of all. And I have to say, I have to put down quite a lot of the stuff on it, and I hope she remembers, to my lovely girlfriend, who did really help me when I was doing some research about Vysotsky a while back, in that he disappears. Finding information about him, finding his old articles is very interesting, and I spend a lot of time hunting for him. He is possibly one of the most dangerous men in recent history of Russia for the West, because he's certainly smarter than many of his predecessors. His predecessors were worried and wanted to continue with Gorshkov. And Gorshkov is, of course, all about building the Russian state as a way of justifying building the Russian Navy, which means you do not build abroad. You do not build abroad. Vysotsky went, no. I need a navy more than anything, and I need a navy first, and I will get that trade, I will get that technology wherever I can. It's down to him you have the Mistral class. It's down to him you have the modern Russian Navy you are facing to this day. The Kivrak 4 or the Admiral Gorshkov class. They have become, whilst they were laid down before he came to power, what they became is certainly down to his efforts. But he disappears. Shomak, the KGB will be coming to your house. They're called the FSB now, and well, if they bring the Domino's pizza with them, I don't mind. The Russians were buying Mistral classes, yes, they're LHDs. And then, of course, the French decided they weren't going to sell them, so they sold them to Egypt instead. But they'd already given the Russians the technology, so the Russians have taken the technology from the Mistrals, added their own tech in it, reverse engineered, done all sorts of things. It actually got delayed by the Ukraine issue because it meant they lost their good supply of gas turbines. Luckily, the Chinese keep buying their gas turbines for their ships from somewhere else, maybe. And, you know, it works. There's some interesting stuff going on with turning 343, but we're sort of, I'm not sure what's going on. And Iron Duke, be nice, you two. Okay. Super Fraganis, my pleasure. I also have an article pending on this issue in US entry into World War I. I could append it. Okay, that'd be lovely. Thank you. Please do. I'll reference you if I do. I'll reference you when I'm talking about it. Nictasia, do you think Russia, Alexander Clark, is a serious threat to the West as opposed to China? I think both are a serious threat to the West. I think both can be. And I think you have to remember, don't think of it as necessarily a full-on war. Think of it as fighting for peace with global presence, about achieving dominance through presence and other means. If you think about it as a war fighting, everyone goes, well, the West has all this better technology, they have more ships, they have this capability, they will win. You know, as the discussion was going today, and was in the nicest way, the Royal Navy could probably take out most of the Chinese Navy thanks to the Astute class. The question will be, would the Astutes run out of torpedoes before the Chinese Navy ran out of hulls? That's the question. But that's war fighting, and we're not talking about fighting war. We're talking about the sea power of the state. We're talking about fighting the peace. We're talking about naval diplomacy and presence. We're talking about shaping the world before you even fire a single shot. This is what Vysotsky is about. This is what Wu Shengli or No Victory is about. They are about shaping the world before a shot is even fired. And this is the problem. Because the technology level you need for that is you need to look good, maybe not actually be good. You need to have presence, you need to have numbers of ships. I haven't ordered my pizza yet, Daniel Friedman. I haven't. I was planning ordering about 8 o'clock. So you'll say I'll be ordering in a couple of minutes. In the present, the threat is what will they do with Vysotsky and with Russia? It's the Black Sea, it's the Mediterranean, it's North Africa, it's the Middle East. They could destabilize, and the high north, the Arctic regions. And if they are going to keep pushing, and the trouble is with both China and Russia, they're going to keep pushing until they're pushed back. And the trouble is, the moment is when you push back, depending on how it's handled, that is when it could go hot. And at a certain point, they're going to need to be pushed back because strong words won't work enough. Awesome. So thinking, okay, right. Egypt got 2 of the Mistrals. The SES is central to China, Japanese, Indian, Australian, and Indonesian economies. Lots of US trade goes through the SES tier 2. Last time I looked, there was more than 50% of world GDP. It's a lot of the GDP. Awesome. So thinking back to high-low armor policy, is the F-35 the high or the low side of things? Well, that's the trouble. I think it's the high. It was supposed to be the low. I think it's the high. Sometimes what's about to ask, if you're missing out on our account on our record, sorry dinner hasn't arrived yet. Best I can do. Don't worry. I'll order it in a sort of about 8 o'clock. I view Russia as less predictable than China and capable of being a threat and won't let us ignore them. Bad home. The French stopped the transfer due to Ukraine, not after. Yes, I know it was due to Ukraine, but you know. Leave it on him for a bit while I'm still discussing Russia, and then I'll let it just flip through while I talk through the rest. I would say Russia could be effective if it wanted, but it's unlikely to be so. China is a clear and present threat, though not yet hostile. I'd say, as I said, both could be. Don Fritz, a new Russian frigate, as picture of it launching its missiles, really gives perspective of how long cruise missiles are. It's like the size of a water line on top. Yeah. Turning 3 for 3. Iron Duke was clearly wording his feelings over the movie Greyhound 2020. Iron Duke, I'm always nice as a former British soldier. I only ever get shot and never shot anyone politely. I know you both are, but Greyhound can be very, very touchy on the subject for people, and I don't want you two fighting. I don't like it, you know. It's nice. Basically, I was involved in a big movie fight already today. I don't want another one going on in messages. Seriously, the bilge pumps. When you hear it next week, what is the battle or event you want turned into a movie? It was just. If Jeff Bezos or someone like that listens to bilge pumps, please just do all 3 of them. Jeff Beeler, why did the Soviets concentrate their shipbuilding in Ukraine? Because that's where they had the best shipyards. They didn't just concentrate in Ukraine; they had it all around the place. But Ukraine was one of the best places to build it. I'll be back in a second. The one problem with having had an iron brew diet all day is it does go straight through you when you've had no food. They didn't really concentrate their shipbuilding. What's more, they concentrated their large gas turbine engine manufacturing in Ukraine. That's more problematic. Jeremy. One decade of 21st century when Russia tried on many occasions to get technology equipment from abroad. German power plant designs, MTU's easels, French trailer. Yeah. Probably a good idea for them to build battleships with big guns. Actually, if you consider for the Black Sea and the Baltic, it makes sense, battleships. They do make sense in those confined waters. David Freeman, enjoy D&D. Seeing wide. Oops. Google Earth interesting views of China fortifying massive area at the center of the South China Sea. When they do that, Google that is. Not long ago. That's a nice point to make. Not Domino's. They're terrible pizza. They might not be the best, but they have one major advantage. They are very good at delivering if you're living with shielded people. And they really do look after the people who you want to protect. So that's why the Domino's. They are, nice people from that respect. Vladis Suriko is a master of theatre, and he's exceptional at the subtle and the obtuse. Yeah. I don't really. Let's get that verified, lest we all end up playing a real threat. Underplaying a real threat. Yeah. Trentlenko. The issue of presence in the modern world is the cost of manpower. Presence with roboboats runs aground on that point, given the piracy of unarmed US and robosubs. Yeah. There are all sorts of interesting. Yeah. Well, the Russians had those lovely K-25s ready to go. And that's the thing. When they're available, you might as well use them. Sorry. Right. 1900. Trafalgar, Jutland, the Falklands are oblivious of battles, wars, needing good moves. They definitely do. Let's see. Favorite movie battle. For my part, I would go for Game of Thrones style Adriatic World War I series. Less unity, more of a certain rock. No. If you did the Adriatic without Porco, that's just wrong. It's got to have a Porco in it. Oh, not give up on that one. Do it the other way. I'm going to have to be rude for a little second while I quickly check on my phone for delivery information. If anyone's interested, what makes Russia so dangerous is the ideas philosophy of Mastervoka. It's beautiful. You see, that is a lovely idea, which of course Tom Clancy plays up to the massive effect. But honestly, they also make these things so complicated that it's not really going to actually be viable, and that is their big problem. That is their really problem. Domino's is great when you can find the actual app. It's Tuesday. I'm not going to go pick it up. What do I fancy? Oh. No, I can't get myself a feast on my own. No, I'm not going for the happy deal either. Oh, it's so complicated. So many deals these days. So many deals. Mm. No, I am. And I'm not going for the 2 for Tuesday because I would end up eating all the pizza. It looks like I'm going for the kicking chicken. Right, done. Let's see. What did I suggest? Domino's is better than Papa John's. Oh, good. Vision. A while back, we put a table by the driveway to take pizza delivery during pandemic. Very good choice, Vision. I like that idea. I'm currently running a more limited production than they used to. No ground beef, please, today. I fancy. No. Yeah, ham. And. Random. So. Raid on Toronto for a movie? That was a good one. I'm sorry to be distracted ordering food quickly. No thanks. Set aside. Oh, that's easy enough. I'm not going to expect something so expensive. Oh. Right. So, good navy from the RM perspective instead of the US. Are we talking about the raid on Toronto or the third battle of Narvik? Oh, both would be good. Both would be interesting. See what I read a real movie of Jutland to be. I know a real movie of Jutland to be good, but honestly, well, the interesting thing was Jutland to do it properly. We thought it needed to be a sort of series like 24. Come on, I'd say Pearl Harbor needs a good movie. Yeah, it does. For movies, I wanted an Operation Pedestal movie. Arctic Convoys. Ooh, interesting. I was going with Markinson. How about Jutland? Real sharp. Real ships. How about? Ooh, well, we'd love to do that, but I don't think it's ever going to happen. That's the trouble. Sorry, it's always so many passwords, these things. That is the real problem with it. It's annoying, but it's the file. Ah, there you go. There's the password. Right then. Ooh, HMS Shannon versus USN Chesapeake. Yeah, that we'd actually came up with a small problem. If you do a movie which is an Age of Sail one, it's got to stand up to Master and Commander, and that's the thing. It's got to be as good as Master and Commander, and that's the problem. Different. It is Frank's fault. Then Carl Gasberg, indeed, Russia activity follows the concept of simplicity. That's refined exceptional execution. Yeah, there's a whole interesting debate going on here. Carl Gasberg, 90-1. Most people are doing multiple debates, so I'm trying to keep track and get involved. And any commentary about Turkish French incident in Libyan waters? I wasn't surprised it took place. I really wasn't. It's one of those scenarios where you're looking at it and you're going, it's going to happen. My pizza is now ordered, yes. I have my pizza tracker live. When the pizza gets here, that's when I will end tonight's talk. So, you know, don't take this the wrong way, but when food arrives, that's when this is over. I know Hollywood has ridiculous budgets for films, but even they would struggle to build the British and German fleets of Jutland. It would all be CGI. It would all be CGI. Actually, another movie TV series I want is Ireland participated in the Indian Pacific Oceans in World War II. Well, of course, I'm going to provide the script for that movie in terms of part, because I'm going to the Indian Ocean from 1941 to 43. But that would be a very, very big movie to do, and it would be pretty difficult to bring about. The thing was, when you're doing a movie, you've either got to be able to focus on one person or one ship to hold a story together. If you're talking about doing a series, though, that's more interesting. You can do a lot more. And this is what I was sort of thinking, because when I was talking about it, I was thinking more and more about, well, if you had Netflix do a series or Amazon did a series which was about it and actually had it all in and did a long term, that would be far more sort of things. It would have to be on Game of Thrones sort of scale, but you could do Jutland, you could do the Battle of the Atlantic. There was a film about Divers in Gibraltar, and we'll try and find the name of it, but I thought it was very good. It was very good, but it's not that recent. So, actually, for Arctic Convoys, there is a Russian series, Convoy PQ-17. Just heard of it and have not watched, so don't know if it's good. The Jeremy Clarkson brought a program on PQ-17 was absolutely fantastic. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the Russian one, and I probably have to. Whilst I can read Russian technical documents quite well. In fact, I'm considered a bit of a weirdo because I can tend to read most engineering documents no matter what language they're in. If I'm going to watch something properly in Russian, it's either going to have the translate thing on the bottom going, or it's going to have my girlfriend close to me because she's far better with languages than I am. Ooh, Trent Lugger, I'd like to see a good movie on the US picket stations at Okinawa in 1945. It won't happen because scope of battle within too many ships over for too long to do the cast. Yep. Although we did have an interesting idea about, I think it was Sama with the idea of USS Johnson, I think, with, what's his name? The Rock. manning one of the 5-inch turrets. They just want to do what modern Star Trek does on CBS: copy and paste 100 identical ships. You know, it was okay. Carmen Gassman, an Adriatic movie or series has the advantage that you can build a bunch of small ships and flying boats as actually working one-to-one replicas. Maybe even the 400-ton destroyers. C1. Allspite in Norway needed over in USA. Nazis confronted with RN before the Battle of Britain. Also, the unknown 4 Pipers at Balkan. Both are promises of war to come. It's Donald Fritz. It's not history, but make Red Store Rising a movie. I think there was a plan once to make one and make it into a movie. Stuff Johnson. Are there any War of 1812 miniseries other than the one Drac is doing? Not really. Angerson, Dwayne Johnson. Yep. Constant drowsiness. Dating a good linguist will do wonders for your academic career in this postmodernist nightmare. Possibly, but honestly, that's not why I'm with her. She's amazing. I'm very, very lucky to have her as my girlfriend. I'm still not quite sure why she hangs around because she's far smarter than I am, but you know, I enjoy this stuff and. But no, seriously, she's a superstar. She can do multi-translation in her head and evaluate them and all sorts of things. She does all sorts of stuff with the foreign language stuff. And that's me, I can take technical documents to pass. Doesn't matter what language they're in. But that's because engineering is its own language. You know, this is what some of my colleagues, I have to explain to them occasionally. They're going, I can speak fluent whatever language, but I cannot understand this document. Well, that's because it's engineering. It's not necessarily... Engineering is written in engineering usually, and, you know. So it says, Zumwalt's personal life in invaded China right after the Japanese surrender would present a great basic scenario for a war movie. Possibly. Rob Marsh, maybe Crete evacuation, convoys and defending Malta. Yeah, ooh. Oh. That's Clark. You need to look up Gary Grisby's War in the Pacific computer game. It models every allied Japanese ship, plus aircraft and land forces. Ooh, very nice. I'll have to. Donald Fritz, US indie movie without Nicolas Cage. Aww, Nicolas Cage does his best wooden acting in it, though. No, he actually does really try in that movie, and he does really good. And honestly, Indianapolis wouldn't have got made as a movie unless you have that sort of star power. It's like Greyhound. That wouldn't get made without Tom Hanks. So I was supposed to be an engineer. If you can speak engineering, you do. Golden Eagle, Robert Marsh. Malta reminds me of Rook's Drift. I can see the point. I can certainly see the point of that. Oh. Ooh. There was a film, The Malta Story, 1953. It's a lovely movie. It is. It is a lovely movie, but it's not really up to date, and that's the trouble. You need to sometimes think about it from the perspective of people. Right, the movie is currently at the... Pizza is currently in the oven, so we'll start off with final questions, please. You've got probably about 15-20 minutes, because we're not that far from Domino's here. Linguistic. Once I had to translate an Italian-made factory machine manual from English to Hungarian, while whoever wrote the English version clearly didn't know the machine nor spoke English. Sadly enough, that's often true with technical manuals. Andrew. Tom Hanks is 9 years older than me. I am 55, and he proposes at the start of Greyhound to some blonde. Well, you know, he's Tom Hanks. He can get away with a lot of things that you and I couldn't do. Calvin Gasman. Luckily, the machine was there, and I could go out and ask the guys. That sounds sensible. And the charge of the new Teferi and the charge of the Light Brigade, I'm presuming. Grounds. Cage at his best is excellent, but he can be hammy at times. That's the thing. It was one of the interesting things we added in because a guy called Torfemin, I think it's a gentleman, put the question to us on Twitter. The charge of the tin cans. Sorry. And put the question to us on Twitter, what movies would like. And I said, sort of, which actors would you put in them? And that's the interesting thing, because if you can get... I often think the trouble with the Pearl Harbor movie was the actors they got weren't really famous enough on their own that they could do the story as they might have wanted to. If you look at some of the work that Matt Damon has done and later, and Ben Affleck has done later, when they have the ability, when they have the financing and the ability to exercise quite a lot of input, it's amazing what the quality of the movie comes out. But you know, it's kind of a case of, right, and we're going to pick actor. The trouble is when you've got actors that age, you needed an actor in Pearl Harbor. You needed almost an actor who was one of the senior leads, one of the would be a senior lead and would be one of the older characters who would be powerful enough to go, no, that's not how we're going to do this. Like the joyous person that is Tom Hanks, because if you can imagine Tom Hanks, he isn't going to sign up to a movie which is less than perfect. Hugh Laurie as a naval captain would be very interesting. Robert Downey Jr. as a naval captain would be very interesting. Honestly, if I was going to have anyone play Philip Vian, and this was a question put to me, I was sort of going, it's got to be between Robert Downey Jr. or Hugh Laurie. It really has. Michael Fassbender, or maybe. Ooh. Could Sherlock pull it off? Possibly. Sherlock could pull it off as well. Or Matt Smith. Matt Smith would be excellent. He's already played a naval officer as the Duke of Edinburgh, so he could do it. Decision. So we talk about the PLN as a real threat with good cause, but I wonder about their ability operationally in a proper naval battle. Inexperience and no corporate culture could really hurt them. It could, but they're going to be there. Philip said, do you think the UK Queen Elizabeth Task Group sent to the South China Sea will be gently treated by the Chinese Navy, or will they make their numbers felt hard? I think the Chinese will certainly try stuff. How successful they'll be against it will be a very different matter. I think they could well find that the task force that turns up, especially now with the scenario of the Americans after the Bonhomme Richard, I wouldn't be surprised if that task force, when it turns up, is a very much a allied task force. I wouldn't be surprised if there's American ships added into it, if there aren't US Marine Corps aircraft, F-35Bs added into it. And I wouldn't be surprised also if there's quite possibly an Australian and even a Canadian presence as the Anglosphere really sort of goes, we're here. So it could be quite a tough force. Decision, and I stick by Sean Bean in a tribal. I don't want him to die again, and I could just see him as being the captain of HMS Gurkha. I'm fed up with watching the movie. Basically, now whenever I see Sean Bean on screen, I'm going, when's he going to die? Soton's Good Will Hunting, amazing movie to stay. The Accountant is another good one. Yes, well, The Accountant, Ben Affleck, is quite powerful. In Good Will Hunting, you have the amazing comic actor, what's his name, who basically backs them up the whole way through, and because he's one of the holy free for it, he can force things through. Oh, he's dead, but he was a really nice guy. Oh, I've forgotten him now. I've forgotten his name, but he's the one of the thing. second Tony Free, the Tsushima with Brian Blessed as the Russian Roskovsky. If Brian Blessed signed up to play Rozovsky, I would be in the front row for that movie when it came out. Literally, that would be worth paying any money to see. Van Home, who would you have Brian Blessed? Yeah. Tony Free. We can make 2 movies. One with Finn going again. Oh, Russian. I enjoyed today's talk. Got to go. Give blood to Red Cross. And take care, Bichon. Alistair Crow. Much screaming and throwing binoculars. Oh, yeah. He could do it. He could pull it off. Simon, you do know US Bond and Richard burn up in San Diego this week. That is the point. You know, as I said, I was actually live when it started on Sunday, and this is the point about the fact that the Royal Navy could be doing a lot more in the South China Sea. That's why the Americans could get it. It could transform what was going to be originally a British visit task force to show the British back to something else. Robin Williams, thank you. Yes, now my pizza is on its way. So, last questions. One advantage of not having a naval culture is they don't have the bad habits and complacency like the Germans and to some degree the Americans. Full of vigor. Yeah. Sure. What do you think is the most bizarre naval conspiracy theory? That the Royal Navy somehow manufactured and deployed an aircraft carrier in like a couple of days in the Falklands War. I don't know how anyone, the fact that the vast majority of Argentinians do not believe this, but the fact there's anyone in Argentina who believes that's possible is worrying to me. Because it's just not physically possible. Ken McCall, I'm not really a fan of F-35, but in general, the plane that sees first shoots first, and the plane that shoots first wins. And the F-45 electronics are way better than MiG-21. Long time to get into service. Evening, Thomas. Golden Eagle. What? How? Argentina? What? Yeah, Golden Eagle. Look it up. There is it was put down by some. Basically, the Argentines claimed they sunk HMS Invincible during the Falklands War. It was some propaganda put out, and no one really believed it, but some people still do believe it. And the idea is the British managed to manufacture and build a new replacement aircraft carrier and send it down there in like a couple of days. I would be more interested in the Voyager Second Pacific Fleet over a movie over Tsushima. Would prefer that they focus on the voyage, hijinks, and politics. The trouble is, if they're going to do the voyage, it's got to be a series. It has to be a series. It has to be a sort of a full series to get it right. And that's the thing. You know, that requires Jeff Bezos to go, I will open up my bank account. Greg Sussy, at some point, can you discuss, maybe in bilge pumps, the issues of the US Pacific Fleet? It seems they have systemic issues leading to mistakes like collision fire. We might well look into that. I think if we're going to do that, we probably invite one of our American colleagues to be on there, because we don't want to seem like it's the British and the Australians attacking the Americans. We want to sort of, you know. So it says, if the QAC is kept in the Orient for an extended time, where are they based? Australia? Singapore? Singapore. Donald Fritz, if the US wanted to become bare-bones CVL in World War II, how fast can they make it if it's pre-fab Liberty ship style? Ooh. Probably about 3 or 4 months. Maybe more. It depends on what you're talking about. They did doing some pre-fabbed escort carriers, and they were built fairly quickly. Sure, mate. If we talk 35 enough, we'll summon Neuhauser. Probably will. Look it up, Golden Eagle. Look it up. You will find there is lots and lots of stuff about it, and it's quite worrying. 1900 Hornblower TV series is also well worth watching. Yes, and the fact it's not on Netflix or Amazon Prime or anything is really annoying to me. Sam Thompson, Tsingtao? Could be a cool movie. Gone Eagle. It's actually Qingdao it's in eastern China, and it's spelled Qingdao. But yeah, I call it Tsingtao. JCG Dusk Light, re-USN issues. Check out ProPublica's investigative journalism issues. Basically, my theory has always come down to it's too many tasks, not enough ships, and not enough time to do the stuff which goes into the making the crew and the ships sort of easier. Not enough, there's all sorts of systemic issues out there. See you, friends. Hi, Dr. Clark. I just sent the article on Hugo Grotius and Freedom of Seas to your email. Your videos are a pleasure. Thank you. I'll tell you that. Let's go with how the beer is spelled. That is how I do go with it. Definitely how I go with it. The driver hasn't arrived yet, so I don't feel like racing the driver. Really not that far. It's literally, I have driven the distance from Domino's to my house myself in less than 3 minutes, but we will leave that to one side. For how long will Bonhomme Richards burn? That depends on what started the fire in the first place. That is honestly, it depends on it, and it's... Just right, so ownership. Why haven't they just tried flooding the ship? They are, basically. But there's only so much water you want to let in when you're trying to preserve the ship. And also, there's problems. If it settles there, then there's issues if it settles there. As you can see, what have we got coming up? Battle of Texel. That's always a prom one. And could creep. There's a lot of what-ifs, I have to admit, in this one. There's the Tsingtao and there's Crete, which are two what-ifs. Ah, pizza's here. Right. Take care. Thank you to you all. Thank you. I'll be down to pick it up in a second. Thank you. Right. Pizza is here. I love you all. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the super chats. Thank you for all the subscribers. Thank you for all the patrons. Thank you for being such nice people and chatting away with me and turning up to these talks. There is Twitter, there is Patreon, there is Global Maritime History. There are links to all the things I discussed down here. Turning 343, you have to work on your Dutch pronunciation with Tixiel. I'm hungry. And there are links to all the Discord, etc. down below as well. Thank you very much. Take care. And I will see you on Thursday when I am reliably informed by this. It is naval diplomacy, which is going to be fun. I've been doing a lot of stuff, and that's part of the reasons this has sort of fed into it. It sort of feeds into naval diplomacy, what I'm going to be looking at, okay? And fighting peace, basically. Fighting for peace, which always sounds a weird thing to some people, but it is true what you talk about. Alistair Cow, see you in about 5 weeks. Take care. Jack Ray, take care. Jim Heaton, thank you. Take care. 99 Duke, 23 for free. F and Philippe, thank you. Take care. Bandholm, take care. Stephen White, Carl, Greg, John Shea, Albert, it is Fran's fault. Donald Fritz, how much do you want to bet Navy ships ban storage of cardboard boxes in wooden pallets? I'm coming down, Fritzis. Thank you. Yep. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Take care. And quickly. Toodles and thank you.